Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. My name is Mike Johnson, and for many reasons, I'm just an average guy from the American Midwest. Most people would consider me unusually lucky until I became involved in serious problems at the age of 38. I had most of what people dream about: two wonderful daughters, a beautiful wife, a nice home, many friends, a successful electrical contracting business, and a new pickup truck. Even my weekend poker games had been going my way. Of course, I had never hit any big lottery jackpot, but as the old saying goes, a little goes a long way. I had enough to afford some extras. The truth is that I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth and had worked hard to get what I have today. To be honest, my wife Jessica played a very important part in my happiness. Without her support, it would have been very difficult to get things running our way. We met during a winter ski trip to Colorado. I was there with 3 friends, and during the first evening at our lodge, we found 2 very attractive women sitting at a large table where we had decided to sit down. Boys will be boys, and all 3 of my friends began competing for the attention of the prettier one. A solid 9 out of 10 leaving Jessica, a 7 out of 10, to me without any competition. When one of them succeeded in winning over the prettier girl, my 2 other friends discovered that Jessica, who was probably the better choice among them, had already shown interest in me, to everybody's surprise. Their connection lasted for the whole vacation. I declined my friend's suggestion about switching partners after a few days. Back home, Jessica and I continued our relationship, and after a few months, I moved to her hometown where I got a job with the local electrical company. When the owner retired some years later and moved to Arizona, I bought both the business and his house, which have developed very well since then. Jessica and I married 2 years after we met. I had never had any thoughts about being unfaithful to Jessica, and until recently, I had a very difficult time thinking that she ever would do that to me. As attractive as she is, she must have gotten plenty of more or less serious attention over the years. Then I met Amanda Wilson, which changed everything for several people in our lives. It happened at an information and training course for a new version of the electrical management software I used in my business. In class, we worked in teams of 2, probably because the consultant who held the course had a much easier job when the participants could solve problems without asking him for help. I had been chosen to work together with Amanda Wilson, who had not arrived when the course started. The consultant told me that Amanda had called and was on her way. Due to her traditional-sounding name, I expected her to be in her 60s. That was okay with me because I had met several older ladies who were very knowledgeable about computer systems. 10 minutes later, the youngest and prettiest woman in the whole class came in, introduced herself as Amanda Wilson, and sat down next to me. Amanda was a bright and easygoing person, so we had no problems with the new software. We worked very well together and had plenty of time for small talk during the lessons. She told me that she was 25 years old and was responsible for the administration at her hometown's leading women's clothing boutique. The course was a 2-day event, and it was she who suggested we go out together for dinner at a nice restaurant. I knew a place in town where we had a good time. Back at our hotel, Amanda told me that she had a boyfriend who was in many ways a nice guy, but they had an increasing problem in their relationship. She asked if she could talk about it with me, as she had nobody in her hometown she wanted to discuss such very private problems with. She said that she felt she could trust me. I accepted, and she suggested her room instead of the hotel bar I had proposed. We went to her room and sat down at the table. After dimming the lights, she began talking about her boyfriend. He was a good and handsome guy in many ways, but their intimate relationship was far from what it ought to be between 2 people of their age. She couldn't help getting emotional as she continued her story. When she felt comfortable with it, I let her talk without interrupting her. Here is my short version of her much longer story. When they met, he had been a real gentleman without any romantic advances. At first, she was proud of his good manners. But then after 2 months without any romantic progress from him, she began to worry that something was wrong in their relationship. She decided to have a serious talk with him about his lack of interest in intimacy and didn't buy his explanation about waiting until marriage. She told him that there would not be any marriage if they could not develop a satisfying romantic relationship. He was a good guy, but she could not think about marriage without genuine intimacy. Even he understood that, but he felt the pressure, and their first attempts ended in total failure. They tried watching romantic movies, but he found them inappropriate and told her that they were totally against everything he believed was right. She had not had enough experience during her earlier relationships, which is why they had fallen into some kind of standstill. She asked me how my wife and I had handled things when we met. I told her the truth. We had met at a lodge during a vacation and had developed a strong romantic connection only a few hours after we met, because it felt right for both of us. We had never regretted what we did. It was a good beginning and one of the reasons why we continued our relationship back home. After a while, Amanda asked for my advice on how to help her boyfriend become more comfortable with intimacy. We ended up spending the night together, and we had a peaceful sleep until the next morning when we shared another close moment before I went back to my room for a shower and clean clothes. When I left her room, a middle-aged woman in the next room opened her door, saw me coming out of Amanda's room, and shouted, "Shame on you!" I didn't care. I met Amanda at breakfast, which was a real pleasure. The course ended at noon, and we went to my room for a brief goodbye before we had to check out. After lunch together, we exchanged contact information and decided to stay in touch as friends. To my great surprise, I didn't feel any strong guilt for what I had done. I really hoped that I had been of some help to Amanda in her relationship. Though I hadn't mentioned anything to Amanda about my own concerns, I had a strange feeling that there was something changing between Jessica and me since she got her promotion 6 months ago. When I asked her about it, she only told me that she had to focus more on the job until she got used to the new responsibilities. After her promotion, it sounded reasonable, so I hadn't bothered to investigate further. But now I had a question in my mind. What did Jessica do for entertainment during her business trips? I had asked her several times why she and her coworker Nancy preferred to stay overnight at the state capitol only 90 miles from home when they had been at the company's main office for training or other business. I told her that I could not understand why they stayed overnight when they could have been home by 5 or 6 p.m., and even jokingly asked if she had a boyfriend there, which would make her angry as a hornet. She told me that they used to work long hours when they were there, and both the company and their union required them to rest before driving home. Now that I knew how easy it had been for me to do what I had done, and that it must be much easier for a beautiful woman like Jessica, I decided to find out the truth and do something the next time she went there. Back home, everything went on as usual for a week before it hit the fan. When I came home from work, I found 2 suitcases in our hallway and a furious Jessica in the kitchen. She shouted at me to take the suitcases and go to hell, or wherever I preferred, but she wanted me out of the house as soon as possible. There was no doubt about the reason for her anger. She shouted, "How could you do that to me and the children? I never thought that you were such a cheap creep. Who in the hell put such ideas in your mind? People have seen your shameless behavior at that damn course." My attempts to calm her down failed, and she didn't listen to my explanation. "It's not what you think. Please listen and let me explain." "Nothing to explain. Can you deny that you spent the night in that woman's room? Can you? She had problems and wanted to talk about them. And now you've got a serious problem. That's for sure." After some further arguing back and forth, she calmed down enough that we could come to an agreement. Her parents were at their summer house on the lake, and I could stay in their house for a while until we found a solution. I understood that it was the most serious problem in our marriage and accepted to move out because she usually calmed down within a few days, and any further arguing at this level would do more harm than good. I checked what she had packed in the suitcases and added some more things I considered necessary. When I was loading my things into the truck, she came out crying and suggested I call the kids but not her, neither at home nor at her job. She promised to call me when she had anything to say to me. I left her with a hope to see you soon. Of course, I felt terrible when I sat in her parents' living room watching some nonsense on TV that evening. How in the hell could Jessica get information about Amanda and me? It must have been that damn woman who shouted "shame on you" at me. It's incredible how much effort such a moral watchdog can use to make problems for people they don't even know. I promised myself to confront her if I ever met her again. I could only hope that she didn't succeed in finding Amanda's boyfriend and causing trouble for her too. I went to work as usual, talked every day with my kids, but didn't ask them much about what their mom did or what she had told them about why I was living in their grandparents' house. They told me that the only thing their mom had said was that adults needed some time to themselves now and then, and I would come home again. I took it as a positive sign that Jessica didn't use the kids against me. She even brought my mail to her parents' mailbox. I must confess that I missed her terribly and was sure that I would never be unfaithful again if there was a happy ending to this matter. To my great surprise, Amanda called me one day and had some questions about what we had learned at the course. I must confess that I was happy to hear her voice again, and after solving her problem, I asked if anything had changed for the better with her boyfriend. She sounded sad when she told me that it had been worse after coming home. She had told him that she missed him very much. During the first night at home, she had been very careful in her attempts to encourage intimacy, but got no response at all. She had asked him why, and he told her that he loved her very much but didn't care about physical intimacy. If physical intimacy was so important to her, she could feel free to find someone else and get it once a week elsewhere. She refused and demanded that he see a counselor for his issues, which he refused. She became desperate and gave him an ultimatum: see the therapist at the time she had booked for him, or their relationship was over. That appointment was for 11:45 a.m. next Monday. When Amanda asked about my wife and me, I told her the truth. That Jessica had kept me in the freezer for a while, but I felt it was high time for a solution one way or another. She told me she was very sorry and asked if I was angry at her for causing my problems. I told her that nothing was her fault, and I didn't regret anything we did because it felt right then, and I would never change my mind about it. My words put a happier tone in her voice when she replied about hoping that Jessica wouldn't do anything foolish. When I mentioned that next week both of us could be out of our relationships, I asked her, "What will you do if that happens?" She replied with a laugh, "Find Mr. Right and get married." I was really surprised and asked her, "Get married? Your Mr. Right will be the luckiest man on earth." "No, not yet. He doesn't know about my plans. My boyfriend is still my first choice if he will address our problems." We ended our conversation by promising to call each other the next week as soon as we knew anything. My feelings after talking with Amanda were very mixed indeed. Talking with her had put me in a good mood, but I was sorry for her because our night at the course had not been of the expected benefit for her. I couldn't deny that I had a slight feeling of envy for the lucky fellow who would get such a wonderful woman if her boyfriend was foolish enough to skip the therapist. Less than an hour later, Jessica called me and wanted to see me during lunch. She suggested I get a salad from a popular takeaway place and meet her in a park near her job. I accepted. She didn't say anything further, so I was a bit nervous about what she wanted. I was there a few minutes early, and she arrived right on time. She was nicely dressed in a short skirt and a blazer. She sat down next to me and crossed her long legs. She was beautiful, and I could see that none of the men who passed our bench could resist the temptation to look at her attractive legs. She noticed that too and gave them a polite smile. Her friendly behavior towards me gave me a slight hope about some kind of fair solution to our problems. I said, "I love you, Jessica." Please forgive me and let us be friends again. Please, Jessica, can't we? She looked at me in silence for several seconds before she replied, I can promise you that all my loving feelings for you have not faded away, but I want to date you for some time before I can make my final decision about our future. What about beginning our new relationship with a date at my annual company party tonight? If you don't mind, spouses are invited, and I've already put you on the list. I'll do everything I can to save our marriage. Good. I think if we can make it without any arguing, it will be a very good beginning. I look forward to a pleasant evening. Me too, if you accept my conditions for our first date. Conditions? Isn't good behavior enough? Obviously, it wasn't. Her conditions were that I should remain sober during the whole evening, pick her up at her coworker Nancy's house, and drive them to the party and back home. Perhaps she would allow me to stay overnight when we were back at our house. I was a bit confused about her conditions and asked, Isn't Nancy married? And her husband coming to the party? Why aren't we going together to Nancy's place? Because it is our first date, she replied. I still found her conditions a bit strange and suggested she invite her friends to our house instead if I wasn't invited to Nancy's. I even offered to pay for a taxi for them. Jessica sounded a bit less polite when she said in a much sharper voice, No thanks, you can accept my terms or skip our date. I had no choice and accepted because I really wanted her back and to save our marriage. The annual company party is a popular event in that small town for the simple reason that the company always hires some of the most popular local bands, and the drinks are heavily subsidized. For most of the employees, it is their main social connection with the company. As usual, office people from different departments meet. New relationships are created, both secret ones for that very night and even many long-lasting ones. Some old relationships will be terminated when the temptation for something new gets too strong. That evening, I was outside Nancy's house right on time, and 5 minutes later, a giggling Jessica came out together with a rather attractive woman and two men. One of the men got into the front seat, Jessica in the middle of the back seat with the other man on her right with his arm behind her neck. They continued giggling with each other without acknowledging me. After about 1 minute, the man in the front seat attempted to light a cigarette. I told him that it was a smoke-free trip, which made him begin arguing. To my surprise, Jessica, who knew that I never allowed smoking in my vehicles, interfered with, What the hell? Let him smoke if he wants to. I stopped the truck and told him, Feel free to smoke as much as you want, but outside the truck. He was obviously Nancy's husband because she told him to forget it, and we continued our journey to the hotel where the party was held. Once again, there was some arguing when I drove straight to the parking lot instead of the main entrance. Jessica gave me some harsh comments when I told her that we were going together. She was totally different from the lovely Jessica I had met in the park during lunch and had ignored me during the whole trip. I began to fear the worst for the evening, and how right I was. At the bright lights in the building, I noticed that Jessica and her friends' eyes didn't look as they should. No doubt they had been using marijuana, and I wasn't invited to their party. After some mingling, I was obviously invisible to Jessica. It was time for dinner, which was held at small tables for 4 around the dance floor, with couples sitting together. As expected, Jessica's male companion had taken the seat next to her, which made me feel like I had reached my breaking point. I gave him a light tap on his shoulder and said, Sorry, Charlie, you were sitting in my chair. All 4 at the table began smiling, and Jessica told me, Be a good boy and find a free seat at some other table. I'll talk to you later, which caused loud laughter from the 3 others. I had enough and shouted with a loud voice that got people staring at us, Get away from my seat before I count to 3. I don't think they had expected anything like that from me because it stopped their laughter, but the man made no attempt to get up. 1, 2, 3. At 3, I hit him hard in his face with my right fist, which caused him to fall back with the chair. In an attempt to stop him from falling, I grabbed his hair with my left hand but only got his toupee, which came off when he fell back and hit the floor with his head. I threw the toupee on the table, which got Jessica and Nancy screaming. When the man lay on the floor with one leg on each side of the chair, I couldn't resist the temptation to give him a hard kick. He began writhing in pain. I took the ice water pitcher from the table and poured everything over him. Then I took the tablecloth and pulled it up in the air so everything on the table fell on Nancy and her husband. I shouted, "You damn potheads wanted to play nasty games with me." Jessica began shouting, "I'll divorce you. I'll divorce you." I shouted back, "I look forward to that, you damn drug-using crowd. Tonight, you are out of my house." The whole incident had only taken a few seconds, and nobody tried to stop me when I left the dance hall and got in my truck. On my way to Jessica's parents' house to collect my belongings, guilt hit me, and I asked myself, what the hell have I done? But then I calmed down and asked myself, what the hell had Jessica done? After a quick stop at Jessica's parents' house, I hurried home to my own house. The house was dark as expected, and I went in. Everything was as usual except that there was an empty ice bucket and a tray with 2 champagne glasses and a red rose on the kitchen table. A third glass stood beside the tray. In the refrigerator, I found a bowl of strawberries and a bottle of French champagne. Jessica wanted to celebrate something, but why 3 glasses, and why were 2 glasses on the tray and 1 beside it? I decided to investigate the house more closely. Nothing unusual was seen in the living room, but in the bedroom, there was a new red sheet on the bed and large bouquets of red roses on both nightstands. Jessica had made the room ready for a romantic night. The only question was, who was the lucky man? After her behavior earlier that evening, it could hardly have been me. Was it the toupee-wearing man I had confronted? Now it was clear why there were 3 champagne glasses. The third glass must have been intended for me while she and the toupee man were intimate in my bed. Jessica must have gone completely insane if she could even think I would accept such a humiliation in my own house. That was why that ridiculous humiliation took place at her company party. She must have known that several of the guests at the party were members of my golf club and wouldn't want to associate with me if I had acted as the spineless man she expected me to be. How could she hate me so much a few hours after her pleasant lunch in the park? She was right, divorce was the only possible solution now. I folded the red sheets and laid them at the doorstep with her ice bucket, champagne tray with 3 champagne glasses, strawberries, and a note that read, "Jessica's bordello has moved to a new location, address unknown." Then I secured all 3 doors from the inside by placing boards from my workshop between the floor and the door handles so the doors could not be opened from the outside, even when she used her key. Only a few minutes later, she came alone in a taxi, hesitated when she saw her things and the sign on the doorstep, called somebody on her cell phone, and walked away without trying to come in. The taxi came a few minutes later. If she was able to do what she had done tonight, she would even be capable of being unfaithful during her trips to the state capital with Nancy. I had accepted her explanation, though with doubts, that it was a company requirement that they not drive when they were tired after an intensive day at the main office. If Nancy and Jessica could use marijuana before going to the company party in their hometown tonight, what could they do alone in the state capital? I decided to investigate further for some kind of evidence about Jessica's possible affairs and began looking among her private belongings. Nothing was found in her drawers with underwear, no fancy lingerie or anything else of interest in the bedroom. Nothing strange in her briefcase, nothing in her calendar, no secret codes, no strange phone numbers. We shared the desk in our home office with 4 drawers for each of us. I had never had any reason to look in her drawers before, but now I took a close look at them. Nothing in the first 3 of them, but the 4th was locked. I searched for the key but didn't find any. So I opened the drawer with a bent nail and pliers. The first thing I saw in the drawer was a folder with Jessica's pay stubs, which confused me until I found out why she kept it behind a lock. She had taken some hours off at least one morning every month during the last 5 months, and when I compared the dates with her calendar, it was always the day after their visit to the main office. Under the folder was her private photo album from the time before she met me. She had shown it to me when we moved in together, and there was nothing strange in it. Some old boyfriends and rather innocent party pictures. I opened it anyway, and there it was. Between the pages of the album, I found 8 pictures, probably taken with her cell phone camera. The phone was a birthday gift for me, and she had been very happy when she got it. The pictures were printed out with a high-quality color printer and put the final period to my marriage. 2 showed a young man with curly blonde hair at what appeared to be a bar, obviously after closing time because nobody else was in the picture. In the first photo, Jessica, wearing only underwear, stood next to him measuring something with dollar bills. The next picture showed a topless Nancy in a similar pose. The following 2 pictures were taken in what must have been a hotel room. The first showed Jessica in a compromising position with a man, both of them laughing. Nancy appeared in the next picture with the curly-haired man. The next 3 pictures were taken at a hotel. In the first, Jessica was with a man in a white shirt and red tie on the bed. The same scene was depicted in the next photo, but this time showing Nancy with the man. In the last picture, both Nancy and Jessica sat together on a sofa. A closer look at the pictures showed they had timestamps. The oldest were taken about 5 months ago, and the latest only 2 weeks before my encounter with Amanda. The only possible question now was, what the hell did they do during those trips when they didn't take any pictures? Now Jessica's behavior was a real mystery to me. Acting inappropriately herself, she had planned to humiliate me and make me a laughingstock for the whole town. Now I knew she must hate me intensely, but why? It was a complete mystery. With the evidence of her own wrongdoings in my hand, she could have confessed her own actions. It was impossible to get any sleep. I wrote a text message to Amanda. Dear Amanda, we promised to keep each other updated. Once again, I must say that I'm very grateful for the time at the course. Tonight it helped me find out the sad truth that I'm married to an unfaithful wife. I will get free from her much sooner than it would have been possible without finding the truth after the course. Please call when you can, and I'll tell you one of the most incredible true life stories you ever heard. Your friend, Mike. Amanda called me early the next morning, and I told her the truth about what had happened yesterday. She listened without any comments, and when I came to a full stop, she only asked, "What are your plans for the future?" "Divorce, of course, but I don't know anything further. My boyfriend told me yesterday that he refused to see the therapist I had booked for him, so I left him. That's my story. What are your plans?" "Nothing yet. Any suggestions?" "Yes, it would be a pleasure to see you again, of course on your terms." "Accepted. Your terms don't have to be strict. Let's meet and see what will happen." We agreed to meet the next day at a hotel a short distance from her hometown. Then Jessica called me, angry as a hornet, shouting about the scandal at the party and that her job was in danger. Everything was my fault because I was a damn creep. I replied, "Talking about unfaithful wives, have you collected your own equipment from my doorstep yet? When will you be out of the house? Probably before the new owner moves in. Want to buy it? You're getting worse every day. What did you want? You out of the house. The house is my private property, but you can take all the furniture. I don't want to sleep in your damn bed any longer. Take everything except my clothes and some electronic equipment." "Are you serious?" "Yes. The children. The choice is up to them, but I bet it will be you. Your parents' house will be good enough for you for the time being until you find something of your own. So you don't have any objections to the divorce I mentioned yesterday? Of course not. It was the only sensible thing you said during your drug-influenced condition yesterday evening. Oh my God. It's not what you think. No, I'm afraid that it is much worse. Bye. Jessica called again 10 minutes later and wanted to have her car, clothes, and some other things. I agreed to load the car with everything she had requested and park it on the street with the key under the floor mat. I had put her compromising materials in the trunk. She came in a taxi and took her car. Amanda called me and suggested we meet that afternoon. I agreed and drove to the hotel. We took a long walk, had a pleasant time, and talked about our problems, which made us feel much better. After a romantic dinner at a small restaurant, we called it an early evening. Back at the hotel, Amanda got serious and asked me about my plans for the future, and if I wanted to get Jessica back after letting her calm down for a while. I told her no way and asked her about her own plans for the future. She looked me straight in my eyes and said that she wanted to get married and have 2 children. Then she continued in a low voice, "Do you want to share that future with me?" Amanda, are you serious? Yes, Mike. I love you with all my heart. I've been thinking about you every day since the course, but I didn't dare to say anything to you. I love you too, Amanda. I really tried to fix my marriage, but from now on, you are the one and only. Nothing more needed to be said for a long time because we got involved in expressing our love and continued with that until we were totally exhausted and fell asleep. After an intensive morning together, we went down to the restaurant for breakfast and a small talk about the future. Amanda had no objections when I told her that I wanted to buy a new house and new furniture, and Jessica could take everything she wanted from the old house. If she left something of value, I would give it to the Salvation Army thrift shop. Amanda promised to do her best to get a job in my hometown. I think both of us were pleasantly surprised when we found out how many matters could be resolved without any disagreements at all, and when we did have different opinions, it was easy to find a solution with some give and take from both sides. I felt 10 years younger when I got back from the weekend with Amanda and found out that Jessica had been in the house taking more of her things and leaving me a note on the kitchen table. It read, "Dear Mike, I love you very much, and I'm very sorry for my stupid attempt to be nasty to you at the party. I had it totally wrong. Nobody can blame you for acting like a real man, and I love you even more after that. Everything you have done is forgiven and forgotten, and please forgive me for everything I did and said during that terrible evening when I had lost all common sense. Please give me a chance to explain everything so we can be a happy family again. I love you, Jessica. Your loving wife." What? How in the hell could she say that she loved me if she had been cheating for months, probably with marijuana in her system, and intended to be intimate with that damn toupee-wearing man in my bed? No way. I couldn't even think about taking her back. Monday was a busy day for me. First at the bank, separating our accounts, putting the house up for sale, and then to the court for divorce papers. Jessica called me, and I agreed to meet her on Tuesday evening at a restaurant for what she called a serious talk about our future, probably not exactly what she expected. Amanda was a bit worried when I told her about Jessica's note and that I had agreed to see her so soon after the scandalous party. I understood that she feared I would change my mind, forgive Jessica, and continue with the marriage. I could hear some relief in her voice when I told her that my house was for sale, and the only thing that remained to be done was getting Jessica's signature on the divorce papers. I promised to call her after the meeting. I feared Jessica would use the children against me. However, all decisions were already made, and Jessica could only make minor changes. On Tuesday evening, both Jessica and I were on time at the restaurant and sat down in a discreet booth. I suggested waiting with the serious talk until after the meal. Once again, I realized that Jessica was a very attractive woman, and if I hadn't met Amanda and hadn't found the cheating pictures, I would probably have tried to save the marriage in some way. After the meal, while we had coffee, Jessica opened the serious talk by saying, Dear Mike, I'm sorry for listening to my friend's stupid suggestions about how to get even before forgiving you and not being the loving wife you expected me to be after our pleasant meeting in the park. I regret everything I did during that damn evening. I don't blame you for the damn mess, which almost cost me my job. Please let me explain my plans for that evening, and you'll see that I had no intentions to do what you think about me. Speaking of the evening, how long have you been using marijuana? Marijuana? Yes, I've seen enough people under the influence before, so I'm 100% sure that those 4 giggling idiots whom I drove to that party were high. I saw your eyes in the bright light at the entrance, and I doubt that you've been foolish enough to get involved with the toupee man in my presence without that stuff in your system. First time only. Nancy got it as a gift from an old friend of hers, and we were curious to try it. What about your setup in our bedroom? Did you really think that I'm such a poor fool that I would have let you be intimate with your toupee-wearing boyfriend in my bed with me watching or waiting for my turn? He is not my boyfriend. Ronnie is only a fellow worker who paid a terrible price for helping me get even with you at the party. Have you been intimate with him before? Of course not. You have got the wrong opinion of everything that evening. If you had agreed to sit at some other table, my intention was to come over to you after the meal, tell you that I had forgiven you, and then be together with you the whole evening. The bedroom flowers, champagne, and strawberries were for you and my attempt to get a romantic restart to our marriage. That's the simple truth. Why 3 champagne glasses? There was a crack in one of them. That's the only reason. Sounds reasonable, but I regret to say that there are too many inconsistencies in your explanations. I don't think you've told me the whole truth. She got a stressed expression on her face when she replied, I'm sorry if you don't believe me when I tell you the truth. What else do you want to know? The real truth about when you began with marijuana during your nights out with Nancy. So far, I know about 5 months, but is it 6? How could you let such a damn woman take total control over you and let her persuade you to betray and destroy your marriage? Am I totally wrong when I say that our marriage was better than average, at least until your promotion? She blushed and turned completely red in the face when she replied, Our marriage was great until your course, but you were wrong again because you ought to know that I've never been out partying with Nancy on any girl's night out. Of course not here in the hometown where people know you. Your wild nights out were at the state capitol. I've checked with your job and your union, and there is no rule about staying overnight after being at the main office for business. They told me that some days you were ready as early as 3 p.m. and could have been home no later than 4:30 or 5 o'clock. You had hardly any reason to stay there overnight, at least not for resting. I know that you and Nancy took a few hours off work the days after for resting, and you paid for the hotel with your own money, or probably someone did it for you as payment for your services. Are you accusing me of something? I opened my briefcase, put one of the compromising photos on the table and said, Yes, I am. Jessica began to understand that the game was coming to an end. I didn't see any reason for not going straight to the main point. I told her, Dear Jessica, I confess that I did something totally wrong when comforting Amanda for her problems, which ended up in intimacy. Though there are never any excuses for cheating, I will never regret what I did because it led me to know that you have been using drugs and cheating on me for a long time. However, I was really in love with you until the damn company party. And after meeting you in the park, I was overjoyed at getting a chance to save our marriage. Why, Jessica? Why the damn stupid games after my course? If you had only confessed your own cheating instead of pretending to be hurt, we could have called it even and saved our marriage. Why didn't you do that? Why be ruled by a damn unfaithful woman in a silly effort to humiliate me in the worst possible way? If you had kept some common sense in your drug-influenced brain, you would have understood that I'm not any spineless coward. I regret to say that now a divorce is the only thing for us under the present circumstances. She began sobbing. I can explain the photo. It is not what it looks like, and my only intention with Ronnie was teasing you for a short time. Please let me explain and forgive me. I don't care about the toupee man. I'm talking about all your other lies. I told her my suggestions about sharing our belongings. She accepted my suggestions and understood that all a lawyer could do for her was write a big bill. She signed the papers I had in my briefcase. We remained in the booth for half an hour until she calmed down enough to drive home. We agreed to meet again within a few days to clear up further matters and parted. It was a terrible evening. Even for me. I had ended my marriage to the mother of my children, a beautiful woman who had shared many happy years with me. I felt totally empty when I came home to the empty house that had usually been filled with happy voices and laughter. I felt terrible, but knew that it had been the only possible alternative. After resting for about an hour, I called Amanda, who understood my feelings because her own parting from her boyfriend was far from easy. We talked for a couple of hours, and she told me she felt much better, and so did I. The next day, I mailed copies of Nancy's compromising photos to her husband along with a short letter. Dear Sir, I didn't like it when you and your unfaithful wife humiliated me at the damn company party. It is my turn to laugh. I've got Jessica's pictures of your unfaithful wife Nancy in action. I really hope you'll enjoy them as much as I did. Best regards, Mike Johnson. It wasn't very friendly to send the pictures, but why should I regard him as a friend after what he did to me during the damn party? One of my golfing friends, whose wife worked at the same company as Jessica and Nancy and had been rather close to the table at the party, called me the next evening and told me that most of the people at the party had supported me and that Jessica's group had left the party only a few minutes after me. His wife had told him that Jessica wasn't a popular woman at the office any longer. She and Nancy had a serious argument, almost a fight, in the parking lot when they had arrived there today. 2 days later, he called me again and told me that this morning, Nancy had gone into Jessica's office and hit her hard in the head with the keyboard, giving Jessica a real black eye. Nancy was fired, and Jessica was given the last warning to behave if she wanted to keep her job. The reason for Nancy's anger against Jessica was that her husband had almost gone crazy when he got the cheating pictures, accused her of lying when she told him that Jessica was behind sending them, and threw her out of the house. 2 days later, Nancy's husband filed for divorce. I met Jessica the same evening Nancy had been thrown out to discuss further details about how to limit the problems for our children in this sad matter. The large sunglasses could not hide the large black eye on Jessica's face. I told her that I knew the truth about it. She looked at me for a while before she said, "It was you, wasn't it?" Yes, and it feels good that she got her just punishment. I signed a letter with my own name so her husband would know who sent it. Who cares if Jessica's husband accused her of mailing the pictures? Jessica agreed to avoid all connection with drugs to gain custody of our children. To my great relief, we found it easy to reach a fair agreement about the children. I then told Jessica that I had reconnected with Amanda after finding the pictures. We had met at a hotel and taken the first steps towards a relationship. However, she had no reason to blame Amanda for our divorce because my efforts to save our marriage and never cheat again had been my first choice. I had been sorry as hell after the fiasco at the party. I also let her know that we would have gotten divorced even without my cheating because I had planned to hire a private investigator to find out what she did during her next trip to the state capitol. Jessica got a strange look on her face when she replied that she had terrible remorse after her last trip and told Nancy that she would never again cheat and stay overnight. This was why she had become so humiliated and angry about my cheating and wanted to give me an unforgettable lesson to ensure I never did it again. She told me she had regretted it as soon as I left the party. When I asked her why she had been cheating around and destroyed a happy family, she tried to explain that it had begun with Nancy taking her to a bar where she knew the owner, who invited them to stay after closing time for a drink on the house. Instead of drinks, he had offered them marijuana. Nancy had used it before and had persuaded her to try it. She got a real high and accepted joining Nancy, the owner, and a young bartender in a party game. The bartender had been rather attractive, and both she and Nancy had been excited for a while before Nancy took him to their room at the hotel. She had stayed at the bar with the owner and cheated on me for the first time in her marriage. Though she had felt terrible remorse, she had gone with Nancy to the bar during their next trip because Nancy was in some kind of infatuation with the bartender. She nodded yes to my question about whether he was curly and blonde-haired. Jessica continued her story, saying that Nancy, who had begun to complain about unsatisfying intimacy in her marriage, continued to see the bartender, who usually had some marijuana and a different friend with him when the bar owner was busy somewhere else. Being courted by nice, funny guys and having exciting experiences had become a habit she looked forward to. Of course, many mornings she had remorse for the cheating, but as it was usually only once a month and a long way from home, she had not feared getting caught. However, she understood it could not last forever and decided to stop it. I replied that she was totally right about that, but it had probably ended in a bit different way than she had expected. Then I could not resist saying that she, as a mentally healthy and well-educated woman, was solely responsible for her cheating, and I would never buy the explanation that it was Nancy's fault that she had cheated away her marriage. When I asked Jessica if she was dating the toupee man, she denied it and said that today they hated each other. She hated both him and Nancy for persuading her to act like a complete idiot at the party that evening. He hated her for making him a laughingstock at the office and among his acquaintances all over town. Nancy blamed and hated her for her own divorce, and Nancy's ex-husband hated all three of them. My short time together with the foursome gang wasn't any highway to happiness for them. As soon as the word was out that Jessica was available, she had a line of suitors who wanted to date her, but for some reason, she had not found any of them interested for a relationship. I hope she will find some nice guy and be happy again. She rented a 4-room apartment and got custody of our daughters, who see Amanda and me very often in our new house. I was very happy indeed when the girls told me that their mom wanted them to be good friends with Amanda, who is my wife nowadays after a trip to Disneyland in California. My daughters and Amanda got along very well together. The girls found that they had a good time together and never accused her of taking their dad from their mom. Jessica and I are polite and correct to each other. Amanda is pregnant with our first child, and I've got a loving wife. The whole experience taught me that sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and what seems like the end of everything can actually be the beginning of something better. Cedar Falls is still a small town where everyone knows everyone else's business, but Amanda and I have built a good reputation in the community. My electrical business is thriving, and we're planning to expand to the neighboring county. Jessica has actually started dating a nice guy, a teacher at the local high school, and seems to be getting her life back on track. The girls are doing well in school and seem to have adjusted to the new family situation better than I had hoped. Nancy left town after her divorce and moved to the state capital. I heard through the grapevine that she's working at a different company there. Her ex-husband sold their house and also moved away, probably to start fresh somewhere else. As for the toupee-wearing Ronnie, he became something of a local joke after the party incident. I heard he eventually found work in another town, probably tired of the snickers and whispers that followed him around Cedar Falls. Looking back, I realized that my marriage to Jessica had been showing cracks for longer than I wanted to admit. Her promotion had changed her, and not just because of the new responsibilities. She had started seeking excitement outside our relationship, and eventually, that led her down a path that destroyed what we had built together. Amanda, on the other hand, brought honesty and genuine affection back into my life. She never tried to play games or manipulate situations. When she had a problem, she talked about it directly. When she fell in love, she said so clearly, That kind of straightforward communication was exactly what I needed after years of growing distance and hidden resentments. The divorce settlement was finalized without much drama. Jessica kept most of the furniture, as I had promised, and I bought a new house across town. Nothing too fancy, but perfect for Amanda and me to start our new life together. The girls have their own rooms for when they stay with us on weekends and school holidays. One interesting development was that several people in town approached me after the company party incident to tell me they had suspected something was going on with Jessica and Nancy's out-of-town trips. Apparently, their story about mandatory overnight stays never quite made sense to people who knew how these business trips usually worked. In a small town, people notice patterns, and the pattern of Jessica and Nancy always staying overnight while other employees from the same company made day trips had raised some eyebrows. My golf buddies were surprisingly supportive throughout the whole ordeal. I had worried that the scandal might hurt my standing in the community, but most people seemed to understand that I had been deceived and that my reaction at the party, while extreme, was understandable given the circumstances. The electrical business actually benefited from all the attention. Several new customers hired me, saying they appreciated dealing with someone who stood up for himself and didn't let people walk all over him. It's funny how a personal crisis can sometimes lead to unexpected opportunities. Amanda found work as an office manager for a local insurance agency, and she's been a great addition to their team. Her previous experience managing the boutique gave her excellent organizational skills and customer service abilities. The insurance agency owner's wife has become one of Amanda's closest friends, which has helped her integrate into the community. We had a small, simple wedding ceremony at the local Methodist church, with just close family and friends attending. My daughters were my co-best women, which made the day even more special. Jessica was gracious about the whole thing and even helped the girls pick out their dresses for the ceremony. The pregnancy is going well, and we recently found out we're having a boy. The girls are excited about having a little brother, and they've already started planning how they'll help take care of him. It's heartwarming to see how they've embraced the idea of our expanded family. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.